I never thought I'd be the type of guy to get like this, but here I am. It all started a few months ago when I had to go in for surgery. Nothing major, just a routine procedure or so I thought. I remember the smell of disinfectant filling the sterile air, the cold pressure of the IV in my arm, and the faint hum of machines in the background. Honestly, I was more worried about waking up than about much else. My wife, Lisa, was supposed to be there, holding my hand, whispering some comforting words. But she was. She'd gone home earlier, or so I thought. The recovery was a blur of painkillers, hazy memories, and the dull ache of an incision. When I finally regained consciousness, I felt disoriented and groggy. The room was dim, with a faint flicker from the TV. I blinked a few times and looked around. That's when I saw it, the glow of a phone screen lying on the bedside table, just out of reach. I was too weak to reach for it at first, but my eyes kept drifting back to that screen. Something about it felt wrong, like a gut punch. In my stomach. I finally managed to shift my arm, and that's when I saw the message notifications pop up. Names I recognized, Michael, my best friend. The messages weren't just casual, they were full of flirtation, code words, and secret plans. I could see phrases like, "Can't wait to see you tonight," and "Been thinking about you all day." They'd been messaging for months, all hidden from me. All while I was lying there, helpless in that sterile hospital bed. My stomach clenched. My palms went cold and clammy. How long had this been going on? How could Lisa betray me like that? I stared at those texts, each one more disgusting than the last. The word love kept cropping up, and I could practically hear her voice talking to him, laughing, whispering secrets I'd never hear. I felt the heat rising in my face, not from fever but from pure, boiling rage. I wanted to throw that phone across the room, but I was too weak. Instead, I just clenched my fists and stared at the screen until the room blurred. When Lisa came in later, I was still lying there, eyes fixed on that phone. She was smiling, innocent enough, yet I knew better. She'd been lying to my face, hiding a secret that cut deeper than any wound from the surgery. I wanted to scream, to ask her what the hell was going on, but I wanted to see her squirm first. I needed to know if she even considered the gravity of what she'd done. She sat next to me and brushed my hair. "How do you feel?" she asked softly. "Like I got hit by a truck," I muttered. My voice sounded hollow, but I couldn't hide the anger bubbling inside. I clenched my jaw so tight it hurt, but I kept my voice steady. "Who's Michael?" For a moment her face froze. Then her smile tightened, a flicker of guilt flashing across her eyes. "What are you talking about?" I reached over, grabbed her wrist, and pulled her closer. "I saw the messages, the ones you've been sending him for months. Don't lie to me, Lisa. I have all the proof right here." I patted the phone on the table, my hand trembling. Her face lost its color, and she looked like a kid caught with her hand in the cookie jar. Her eyes darted around, searching for an excuse. "It's not what you think, save it," I snapped. "I spent the last 3 days in the hospital, and I found out you've been cheating on me. While I was unconscious, she'd been texting him from her phone right in front of me. Do you even understand how much that hurts?" She stared at me, tears pooling in her eyes, but her lips pressed into a tight line. "You don't understand. It was just a—" "Don't," I cut her off. "I don't want to hear any more lies." My stomach churned. I could feel the heat of betrayal burning through my chest, and I knew this was just the beginning. I had to come up with a plan, and fast. Because whatever she thought this was, I wasn't going to let her get away with it. Not without consequences. And that's when I realized I had every reason to make her regret it. I just didn't know how far I was willing to go yet. But I'd find out. Oh yes, I'd find out. To be continued the next few days after I found those. Texts were like walking through a fog. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, and I definitely couldn't look at Lisa the same way. Every time I saw her smile or heard her voice, my stomach clenched. I kept replaying that moment in the hospital room, that phone glowing in her hand. It felt like my chest was being squeezed, like I was suffocating from the betrayal. I knew I had to do something, but I wasn't ready to confront her head-on just yet. I needed a plan, a way to make her understand the depth of what she'd done without just exploding in her face. I started by digging into her phone. I wasn't just going to confront her blindly. I wanted to gather everything I could, call logs, photos, any evidence of ongoing contact. I knew I wasn't going to find anything more incriminating, but I had to cover my bases. I spent hours scrolling through her messages, her social media, even her photos. I kept my hand steady, trying not to let her see how much this was tearing me apart. Every new message, every flirtatious emoji made my blood boil. It was clear she'd been leading a double life and I was just now catching the trail. But I also noticed something strange. She had a specific pattern, messages late at night, erased conversations, and even a secret app I hadn't known she was using. I installed a keylogger on her phone when she left it unattended one afternoon just to get a real-time feed of her activity. Watching her type, I felt my jaw tighten. She wasn't just cheating, she was actively trying to hide it. That was when I knew I had to escalate this. No more Mr. Nice Guy. One night I confronted her again. "Lisa, I know about the secret app," I said softly but with a dangerous edge. "And I know you've been messaging him all this time. How long has this been going on?" She looked stunned, but there was a flicker of defiance in her eyes. "It's not what it looks like," she whispered, her voice trembling. "We're just talking. I swear it doesn't mean anything." "Talking," I barked. "For months. While I was in the hospital, lying there vulnerable, you were planning your betrayal." My hands clenched into fists. "You think I'll just forget about this? You think I'll stay silent?" She backed away slightly. "Please don't do something you'll regret." That's when I decided I'd had enough. I needed to turn this around, make her see that I wasn't going to be the fool she thought I was. I started plotting piece by piece. I wasn't just going to leave her and walk away. I wanted her to feel what it was like to lose everything. I needed a way to make her regret every lie, every secret message, every late-night flirt. The plan started forming in my mind, cold and calculated. I would make her see that I knew everything and that I wasn't going to stay silent. The first step was to get her to admit it in front of someone else, to really see her squirm. But I also had a backup. I'd set up a camera to record her conversations when she thought she was alone, not to humiliate her necessarily, but to have proof when I called her out. The silent, glowing evidence I'd collected would be my ace. I wanted her to realize I was serious, that I had a way to expose her, without a single word needing to be spoken. That's when I started feeling that familiar rush, exhilaration mixed with rage. I could see her world crumbling piece by piece, and I knew I'd be the one to shatter it. As I sat in my apartment that night, staring at the recordings and the evidence I'd gathered, I felt an odd calm settle over me. I knew what I was going to do. I just had to wait for the right moment. Waiting is the hardest part. I could practically taste the revenge already. I was ready to confront her, but I wanted her to know I wasn't messing around. She'd pushed too far, and now she'd have to pay for it. When she finally stepped into my trap, I wanted her to understand without a doubt that everything she'd hidden was going to come crashing down. And when she did, I'd make sure she regretted ever crossing that line. Because betrayal like hers doesn't just get brushed off with a simple sorry. It leaves scars, deep ones. I was about to make sure she understood that firsthand. Just a little more patience, and then the real game would begin. I could feel it. The moment was coming, and I was ready, wasn't going to let you keep hiding it anymore. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the small lockbox I'd bought. "Here's your phone. I've set it up so you can only access it when I say so. If you've got anything to say it now, because once I hand this over, there's no going back." Her eyes flicked toward the box, then back at me, shaking her head as if she couldn't believe I was doing this. "Please," she begged, voice cracking. Just listen, it's complicated. I didn't mean for it to happen, I swear." "Save it," I snapped. "I've heard enough of your lies. You've been caught, Lisa. There's no excuse for what you've done." I handed her the box, the weight of her secrets finally in her hands. I could see the moment she realized her betrayal was exposed for good. Her face crumpled and she looked like she was about to break apart. I didn't feel victorious, yet. Mostly I just felt numb. Because this wasn't about winning, it was about ending this chapter of my life. As she sat there holding the evidence of her deception, I turned and left the room. I needed space to breathe, to think. I knew that from this moment on nothing would be the same, but I also knew I'd taken the first step toward reclaiming my dignity. Later that night, I sat alone, staring at the box with her phone inside. The silence was deafening. I wondered if she'd ever look at herself in the mirror again or if she'd try to justify what she did. I didn't care. I'd made my decision. I was done. The trust was broken irreparably, and I was finally ready to walk away. The next day I made arrangements. I went to a lawyer, filed the paperwork for a formal separation. I handed over the keys, the deed to our house, everything that tied us together. It was a clean break, cold but necessary. I didn't want her to think I'd be swayed or to believe I'd come back begging. No, I was done playing that game. As I packed up my things, I felt a strange sense of calm. The anger was still there, but it was somehow muted, replaced by clarity. I learned that betrayal cuts deep, but it also reveals who you really are. And right now, I knew I had to rebuild not just my life, but my sense of self. That meant standing firm, refusing to get pulled back into the chaos. Looking back, I realized that revenge isn't about getting even for its own sake. It's about reclaiming your power, showing that you won't be taken advantage of. I handed her the keys, got in my car, and drove away. The house, the memories, all of it now just echoes in the mirror. And as I drove off, I reminded myself, sometimes the only way to heal is to cut out the poison completely. You can't fix what's broken, but you can choose to walk away and start fresh. That's what I'm doing now. The days leading up to the confrontation felt like an adrenaline rush mixed with a heavy knot in my stomach. I kept replaying everything, the texts, her reactions, the little lies she told me. I also kept my eyes peeled for any signs she might slip up. She was acting a little more tense, sometimes avoiding my gaze, and I caught her deleting some messages on her phone when she thought I wasn't looking. That only fueled my resolve. I wasn't going to let her get away with this without a serious consequence. One evening, I finally decided it was time. I knew her schedule, knew when she'd be alone, and I had my plan in motion. I prepared the scene carefully. I bought a small gift, a key lockbox, so she wouldn't be able to access her phone without my knowledge. I set up the hidden camera at the exact moment I knew she'd be alone. I even drafted what I was going to say. I wanted her to face this, to see the evidence with her own eyes, and to understand that I wasn't bluffing. When she arrived home that night, I greeted her with a calm but cold tone. "Lisa, I need to talk. It's time you told me the truth about everything." Her face instantly paled. "What are you talking about?" I pulled out the evidence, screenshots of her messages, the call logs, the recordings I'd secretly captured. "You've been messaging him for months, haven't you? While I was in the hospital, lying there helpless, you were planning your escape." My voice was steady, but the anger burned through it like a hot iron. "I have everything right here. How long have you been cheating on me? And don't even try to deny it." Her eyes welled with tears, but her voice was shaky. "It's not what you think, it's just what?" I cut her off. "Just some innocent talking, or were you actually falling in love with him?" She looked away, silent for a moment. Then she whispered, "I didn't mean for it to get this far." I stepped closer, my fists clenched so tightly my knuckles ached. "No, Lisa, I think you knew exactly what you were doing." The days that followed felt like stepping into a new world. I had made the decision to cut all ties, and honestly, at first it was strange, like standing in a room full of echoing silence. I stayed away from the house, from her, from everything that reminded me of what I'd lost. Instead, I focused on reclaiming my life piece by piece. But even as I tried to move forward, the sting of betrayal lingered. I couldn't help but replay that moment. In the hospital room, the shock of finding her secret messages, the disbelief that my best friend had been part of this. It was a mess I never saw coming. And worst of all, I felt like I'd been hit in the gut, betrayed by the two people I trusted most. I also knew I wasn't just going to sit in my pain. I wanted her to understand what she'd lost when she crossed the line, and I wanted to make sure she felt the full weight of it. So I decided to do something that would make her regret her choices, not through petty revenge, but by hitting her where it really hurt, her credibility and her pride. I started with a simple plan. I contacted her friends, her family, people who knew her well, and I told them everything, the evidence, the lies, the betrayal. I wasn't out to destroy her, I told myself, but I needed witnesses to her true character. I wanted the people close to her to see her for what she really was, the girl who'd cheat and lie, even when it meant breaking everything apart. Some people didn't believe me at first, but I had enough proof to back it up. I showed her best friend the screenshots, played her the recordings. It was brutal. I remember the look on the friend's face, shock, anger, disappointment. I felt that same sick feeling deep in my stomach, but I also knew it was necessary. She needed to be exposed for what she was. Meanwhile, I started dropping hints about her secret life on social media. Small, subtle posts, single lines that hinted at betrayal without outright nomming her. I'm not the type to broadcast my pain, but I wanted her to see that the world was learning her secrets. I didn't want to humiliate her outright, but I wanted her to feel exposed. The comments started coming in, friends reaching out, some even calling her out directly. It was like a slow burn, and I watched the fallout unfold from a distance. One day she called me, crying and begging for a chance to explain. I answered the phone, my voice cold. "You had your chance, Lisa," I said. "You chose to betray me. I don't want to hear your excuses. I just want you to know everyone's learning the truth and I'm done pretending I don't know what you've been doing." She tried to deny it again, but I cut her off. "Save your lies. You've lost everything, and frankly, I hope you feel ashamed of yourself." That moment was like watching her crumble from afar. I didn't enjoy hurting her, but I knew it was necessary to send the message that betrayal has consequences. The trust we built was shattered beyond repair, and I didn't want to be the fool anymore. Seeing her lose her footing, knowing she'd lied so easily, there was a strange satisfaction in that. But I also knew I couldn't do this forever. I needed to truly eliminate her presence from my life. I changed my number, moved some of my things to new places, and made a point to surround myself with people who genuinely cared. I refused to let her poison my mind any longer. Every time I felt the sting of everything she'd done, I reminded myself I was better off without her. The final nail in the coffin was when I handed over the evidence I had collected to a lawyer. I wanted her to see that I wasn't just bluffing. I filed for divorce, just to be clear. I knew I'd be better off starting fresh, even if it meant breaking completely free from a relationship that had turned toxic. I remember the day I handed over the papers. I went to her apartment, knocked on the door, and handed her the legal documents. "This is over," I said quietly. "I'm done with the lies, the betrayal, and the fake version of us." Her eyes filled with tears as she looked at the papers. "Please," she whispered, "don't do this." But I turned around and walked away, knowing I made the right decision. She was trying to hold on, but I knew better. I'd seen her true face, and I wasn't going to be fooled again. As I drove away, I felt a strange sense of relief. No more lies, no more betrayal. Just me starting over with a clear mind and a new outlook. I realized that sometimes the best revenge isn't loud or messy. It's simply walking away, knowing you've taken back control of your life. And that's exactly what I did. The weeks after I cut her loose were a whirlwind of relief and reflection. Honestly, I didn't expect to feel so free, so unburdened by the weight of her lies. It was like finally breathing after holding my breath for too long. Still, I knew better than to think I was completely done with this chapter. The betrayal had left deep scars, and I needed to address them, not just hide them under a new routine. I threw myself into rebuilding my life. I started going to the gym regularly, pushing myself physically. The ache in my muscles was nothing compared to the ache in my heart when I first discovered her secret. I also took up some hobbies I'd always wanted to try but never did. It helped. I'd sit at my favorite coffee shop, feel the warm sun on my face, and remind myself that I was reclaiming my happiness piece by piece. But even amidst these small victories, I couldn't shake a lingering question. How did I miss all the signs? Looking back, there were plenty of red flags I'd ignored. She'd become more withdrawn, secretive about her phone, and her excuses for staying late or going out suddenly didn't add up. I'd always blamed myself for not paying enough, for trusting her too much. Now I knew I should have seen it coming. Ignoring those warning signs only made things worse. One particular evening, I sat down with my best friend Mike and told him everything about the text, the secret app, the hidden messages. We'd been close since college, and I trusted him more than anyone. I needed someone to talk to, someone who'd understand the depths of the betrayal. Mike shook his head slowly, eyes darkening. "Damn, dude, that's some serious stuff. I can't believe she kept it up for so long." "Me neither," I said. "And the worst part is I never saw it coming. I was so blind because I loved her." He looked at me for a moment, then said, "Honestly, I don't think everyone's cut out for this kind of revenge, but you handled it smart. You kept your dignity. I nodded. Yeah, I didn't want to burn her down completely, just enough to make her realize what she lost, and I think I did. That's when I realized that I'd come out of this stronger, even if it felt like I was still healing. I started trusting myself more, paying attention to my gut. I learned that ignoring the red flags only made things worse, and I promised myself I wouldn't let anyone do that to me again. I'd be more cautious about who I let into my life, more vigilant about the signs. Still, I kept a part of me cautious. I knew I was vulnerable even now. Trust is fragile, and betrayal is a wound that never quite heals completely. But I also understood that I couldn't let it control me. I was determined to move forward to find happiness again, without her shadow hanging over everything. One night, I decided to write everything down, my feelings, what I'd learned, my plans for the future. It helped me process the chaos inside. I realized that what I'd gone through was a lesson. Never ignore the small signs because they're often the biggest clues. And most importantly, I learned that revenge isn't about hurting someone else. It's about reclaiming your own peace. I pulled out a box of old photos, some of us happy, some of her with Michael, and I put them in a drawer sealed away. I knew I'd look back at those memories someday. But for now, I needed to focus on building a better future. I knew that leaving her behind was the only way to truly heal. And so I did. I kept moving forward, a little wiser, a little more cautious, but ultimately stronger than before. No more secrets, no more lies. Just me, standing tall, finally free. It's been a few months now since I handed her the papers, sealed the deal, and finally walked away. Honestly, at first, I wondered if I'd ever feel whole again, that maybe the betrayal would leave a permanent scar. But something unexpected happened. I started to find peace. Not right away, of course. There were nights I'd lie awake, replaying every moment, every warning sign I'd ignored. But gradually, the sharpness dulled, replaced by clarity and a sense of control I hadn't felt in years. The funny thing about betrayal is how it strips everything bare, leaving you with a raw, honest view of yourself. I learned I was stronger than I thought. I learned that trust is something you give carefully, and that betrayal isn't just about the other person, it's about what you allow yourself to tolerate. I realized I deserved better than lies and secrecy. I deserved honesty, respect, and someone who truly cared. Leaving her keys on the kitchen table that day was symbolic. I set the bundle of keys down, took a deep breath, and told myself, this is it. No more looking back. I filed the divorce papers, handed over everything that connected us, and finally I closed that chapter of my life. That moment, holding the keys, felt like finally locking away the past so I could start fresh. The biggest lesson I've learned is this: betrayal cuts deep, but it also reveals your true strength. Revenge in its form isn't about making someone suffer, it's about reclaiming your dignity and peace. I took back control and I refused to let her actions define me anymore. I've rebuilt my life from the ground up, focusing on what truly matters: my health, my friends, my future. I look around now and feel a renewed sense of hope. The darkness has passed, and the light is shining brighter than ever. To anyone going through something similar, trust your instincts. Pay attention to those small red flags, and don't be afraid to walk away if you need to. Sometimes. The best revenge is living well without someone who doesn't deserve your trust. Believe me, you'll come out stronger. You always do. Now I spend my days doing what I love, working, traveling, reconnecting with old passions. I've even started dating again, cautiously but with an open heart. Not everyone is meant to stay in your life forever, and that's okay. What matters is that you find your way back to yourself. Looking back, I realize this experience taught me more about resilience than I ever thought possible. Betrayal hurts, but it also clears the way for new beginnings. I've learned that the strongest thing you can do is walk away with your head held high, knowing you refuse to be broken. And for any of you reading this, if you're in the middle of your own betrayal, know this: you're not alone, and you have the strength to come out on the other side. So I sealed that chapter with a simple act: handing over the keys, closing the door, and walking forward. Because sometimes, the only way to truly heal is to let go of what was never meant to stay. And I've learned that moving on isn't just about forgetting. It's about building something better from the rubble. I'm finally there.